You know those days when everything feels perfect and you think you're living in a blissful dream? Yeah, that was my life. At least I thought it was. My name's Jake, and I'm just a regular guy, a 36-year-old husband, and a father to a beautiful 5-year-old daughter named Lily. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 7 years. She was my rock, or so I believed. Sarah worked as a marketing executive, and I'm in IT. Our life was a pretty standard suburban setup, a cozy home, family dinners, and weekend outings. I thought we had a good thing going. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One day, I decided to surprise Sarah at her office. It was our anniversary, and I thought a lunch date would be a sweet gesture. I took the afternoon off, picked up her favorite sushi, and headed over to her workplace. I was excited, imagining the look on her face when she saw me. When I arrived, her secretary seemed a bit startled to see me. She hesitated before letting me through, which I found odd. As I approached Sarah's office, I heard muffled voices through the door. My heart pounded in my chest, not from suspicion, but from excitement. I knocked lightly and then opened the door without waiting for a response. The sight that met my eyes was like a punch to the gut. Sarah was on her desk, her blouse half open, and standing between her legs was Robert, an older man and a close friend of my father. He was someone I'd known my entire life. For a moment, they were frozen in shock, but then Sarah started screaming at me to get out. The hysterics began, her voice rising, filled with anger and desperation. I was paralyzed, standing there like an idiot with a bag of sushi. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just felt this cold numbness spread through me. Sarah's words were a jumbled mess of accusations and excuses. She blamed me for being inattentive, for working too much, for not being enough. It was as if she was trying to rewrite our entire history in those few frantic minutes. Robert looked pathetic, trying to button his shirt and mumbling apologies. But his words meant nothing. They were empty, just like my marriage now felt. I turned and walked out, not knowing what else to do. My hands were shaking, and my mind was in a fog. I got into my car and just sat there, staring at the dashboard. The reality of what I had seen started to sink in, and I felt a rage bubbling up inside me. How long had this been going on? How could she betray me like this? And with him, of all people. I went home, packed a bag, and left a note. I didn't want to face her, didn't want to hear more lies or see her crocodile tears. I needed time to think, to process. I drove to a small motel on the outskirts of town, a place I knew would be quiet and away from prying eyes. As I lay on the lumpy bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. My thoughts drifted to Lily. How was I going to explain this to her? She adored her mother. The pain and confusion she would feel broke my heart even more. I decided then and there that I needed to see a lawyer. This marriage was over. There was no coming back from this betrayal. Sarah had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. It was time to pick up the pieces of my shattered life and start thinking about the future, without her. The next morning, the sunlight filtered through the flimsy motel curtains, piercing my tired eyes. I hadn't slept much. My mind was a storm of anger, betrayal, and confusion. I checked my phone. No messages from Sarah, not that I expected any. She was probably still reeling from the scene I'd walked in on. After a lukewarm shower, I grabbed a coffee from the motel lobby and sat in my car, sipping the bitter liquid as I gathered my thoughts. I knew I couldn't avoid reality forever. I had a daughter to think about, and I needed to take the first step towards ending this nightmare. I called in sick to work, my voice shaky as I spoke to my manager. He was understanding, but I could tell he was concerned. Once that was done, I searched for a divorce lawyer. It didn't take long to find one with good reviews. I made an appointment for that afternoon. I drove to my parents' house. My mom opened the door, her face lighting up when she saw me, but her smile faded when she noticed my expression. "Jake, what's wrong?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I hesitated, not wanting to dump my problems on her, but I needed to tell someone. "Can I come in, Mom? I need to talk to you and Dad." We sat at the kitchen table, and I spilled everything. The surprise visit, the betrayal, the ugly confrontation. My mom's eyes welled up with tears, and my dad clenched his fists, his face turning red with anger. "That son of a bitch," my dad muttered, shaking his head. "I never liked that Robert. Always thought he was too smooth for his own good. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Jake. You don't deserve this. What are you going to do? I've got a meeting with a divorce lawyer this afternoon, I said, my voice hollow. I can't stay with her after this. There's no way. Dad nodded approvingly. Good. You need to protect yourself and Lily. We're here for you, whatever you need. My parents' support was a small comfort in the chaos. I spent the rest of the morning with them, trying to piece together a plan. I knew I had to face Sarah eventually, but I wasn't ready yet. When it was time for my appointment, I drove to the lawyer's office downtown. The building was nondescript, and I felt a pang of anxiety as I walked inside. The receptionist greeted me kindly and led me to a small office where a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor sat behind a desk. Mr. Jacobs, I'm Linda Harris, she said, extending her hand. Please have a seat. I sat down and took a deep breath. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Linda nodded, her expression serious. I understand you're here to discuss a divorce. Can you tell me what's been happening? I recounted the events of the previous day, trying to keep my voice steady. Linda listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. First of all, I'm sorry you're going through this, she said. Infidelity is one of the most painful things a person can experience, but you're doing the right thing by seeking legal counsel. We need to think about your daughter and your assets. Do you have any idea how Sarah might respond to a divorce? I shook my head. I don't know. She was hysterical when I found them. I haven't spoken to her since. Linda nodded. Okay, the first step is to file for divorce and establish a temporary custody arrangement for Lily. We'll also need to document the infidelity. Do you have any proof? I walked in on them, I said, my voice bitter. I saw it with my own eyes. Good, Linda said. That will help. We'll need to move quickly. The sooner we file, the better your position will be. Are you prepared for this to get messy? I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. I don't have a choice, do I? Linda gave me a sympathetic look. No, you don't. But we'll get through this. I'll make sure you and Lily are protected. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a small sense of relief. The first step was taken, but I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Sarah. Jake, we need to talk. Please. I ignored it. There was nothing left to say. I drove back to the motel, my mind numb, trying to brace myself for the battles to come. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cheap artwork on the wall, trying to figure out what my next move should be. But my thoughts kept drifting back to Lily. She deserved better than this mess. A knock on the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it cautiously to find Sarah standing there, her eyes red from crying. She must have found out where I was staying, probably from my parents. Jake, please, she began, her voice trembling. Can we talk? I wanted to slam the door in her face, but I knew we had to address this at some point. I stepped aside, letting her in. She looked around the shabby room, a mix of disgust and pity crossing her face. I'm so sorry, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Can't we just fix this? Her words felt hollow, like she was reading from a script. I felt a surge of anger. A mistake? You don't accidentally end up in bed with someone. And with him, of all people? How long has this been going on? She hesitated, wiping her eyes. A few months. But it didn't mean anything, Jake. I swear. I scoffed. It meant enough for you to risk everything. Why should I believe anything you say now? Sarah tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. Think about Lily, she said, her voice desperate. We can't just throw everything away. She needs both of us. The mention of Lily stung, but I wasn't going to let her use our daughter as a pawn. You should have thought about Lily before you cheated, I said coldly. Her expression changed, the tears drying up as quickly as they had started. You're not perfect, you know, she snapped. You're always working, always tired. You never pay attention to me anymore. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So it's my fault you cheated? I asked, incredulous. You're unbelievable. Sarah's face softened again, her voice taking on a pleading tone. Jake, please, let's go home and talk this through. We can go to counseling, work on things. I don't want to lose you. But I saw through her act. The manipulation was clear. She wanted to control the narrative, to make me doubt my decision. I stood firm. "I've already contacted a lawyer," I said, watching her face fall. "This marriage is over. I'm filing for divorce." Her eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "You can't do this to us." "I didn't do this. You did," I replied, feeling a strange mix of sadness and resolve. "Now leave. I need time to think." Sarah stood there for a moment, her eyes searching mine, hoping for a crack in my resolve. When she found none, she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I sat back down on the bed, feeling drained. This wasn't going to be easy. Sarah would fight me every step of the way, using every tactic she could think of. But I was determined to see this through. Over the next few days, things got more complicated. Sarah called constantly, leaving voicemails filled with apologies and promises to change. I blocked her number, needing space to clear my head. Then, unexpected events started piling up. My employer called to inform me that they were downsizing, and my position was being eliminated. I felt like I was in a bad dream that I couldn't wake up from. On top of that, I received a notice from the bank about a missed mortgage payment. Sarah had stopped paying bills, probably hoping to force me back home. I called my lawyer, explaining the new developments. She advised me to document everything and reassured me that we would handle it. One evening, as I sat in the motel room trying to relax, there was another knock at the door. This time it was a police officer. He handed me a restraining order filed by Sarah, claiming that I had threatened her. I couldn't believe it. She was trying to turn the tables, to paint me as the villain. I called my lawyer immediately. She was shocked but told me not to worry. "This is a common tactic," she explained. "We'll fight it. Just make sure you stay away from her until the hearing." Everything felt like it was spiraling out of control, but I knew I had to stay strong for Lily's sake. No matter how many obstacles Sarah threw in my path, I was determined to get through this. I would not let her manipulate me into staying in a broken marriage. I had to rebuild my life, for both my sake and Lily's. As I lay down that night, exhaustion finally overtaking me, I felt a small flicker of hope. It was going to be a long, tough journey, but I was ready to face whatever came next. The days following Sarah's visit were a blur of legal consultations, job applications, and sleepless nights. I was barely holding it together, but I had to keep moving forward. My lawyer, Linda, was a rock, guiding me through the process and keeping me grounded, but every day seemed to bring new revelations, each one more painful than the last. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some papers in the motel room, my phone rang. It was a private investigator I had hired on Linda's advice. We needed concrete evidence of Sarah's infidelity for the divorce proceedings, especially since she was trying to turn the tables on me with that restraining order. "Hello, this is Dan. I have some information about your wife's activities," he said, his voice professional but tinged with sympathy. "Do you have time to meet?" We arranged to meet at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. I arrived early, my nerves frayed. When Dan walked in, he was carrying a manila folder. He sat down across from me and opened it, revealing a stack of photographs and documents. "I'm sorry to have to show you this," he began, sliding the photos towards me. "But it's important for your case." I braced myself and looked down at the images. There was Sarah with Robert at various locations, restaurants, hotels, even in public parks. They looked intimate, comfortable with each other. It was clear this wasn't a fling, it was a full-blown affair. My stomach turned as I flipped through the photos. Dan continued. "They've been meeting regularly for at least 6 months, maybe longer. I've also found text messages and emails between them, discussing their plans and mocking you." Each word felt like a dagger. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had realized. They had built a life together behind my back, all while I was oblivious. Dan handed me a stack of printed emails, and I skimmed through them, feeling my anger rise with each line. "We'll use all of this in court," Dan said. "It'll help strengthen your case for custody and protect your assets." I thanked him and left the cafe, my mind racing. I had to stay strong, not just for myself, but for Lily. She was the one innocent party in all of this, and I had to make sure she was safe and happy. When I returned to the motel, I found a message from my mom asking me to call her. I dialed her number, and she picked up on the first ring. "Jake, honey, can you come over? Lily's here, and she wants to talk to you." My heart sank. I had been avoiding seeing Lily, unsure of how to explain everything to her, but it was time to face the music. I drove to my parents' house, my thoughts a jumble of fear and determination. When I walked in, Lily ran to me, wrapping her small arms around my legs. "Daddy!" she cried, looking up at me with wide, innocent eyes. I hugged her tightly, feeling a lump in my throat. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you doing?" "Mommy's been acting weird," she said, her voice small. "She cries a lot and yells on the phone, and she told me not to tell you about her friend Robert." My heart broke hearing her say his name. I led her to the living room where we sat on the couch. "Lily, I need to talk to you about something important," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mommy and I are having some problems and things are going to change. But I want you to know that I love you very much, and nothing will ever change that." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Are you and Mommy getting a divorce?" I nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, but we'll both still be here for you. You'll spend time with both of us, and we'll make sure you're happy." She sniffled and hugged me tightly. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Lily," I whispered, holding her close. That night, I stayed at my parents' house, not wanting to let Lily go. I tucked her into bed and read her favorite story, trying to bring some normalcy to her world. As she drifted off to sleep, I realized just how much was at stake. This wasn't just about my pain or Sarah's betrayal. It was about protecting my daughter and giving her the best life possible. The next morning, I met with Linda to go over the new evidence. She was pleased with what Dan had found and assured me it would strengthen our case. But the battle was far from over. Sarah was still trying to manipulate the situation, using every trick in the book to paint herself as the victim. I knew there would be more challenges ahead. The divorce process would be messy, and Sarah wouldn't go down without a fight. But I was ready. I had to be, for Lily's sake and for my own. I was determined to come out of this stronger, no matter what it took. Over the next few months, life became a whirlwind of court dates, therapy sessions, and adjusting to a new routine. The divorce proceedings were predictably contentious. Sarah fought hard, especially when it came to custody of Lily and the division of our assets. Each meeting with our lawyers felt like a battlefield, with Sarah trying to paint herself as the victim of a neglectful husband, while I stood firm on the truth. But through it all, I had a clear goal: to protect Lily and provide her with a stable, loving environment. My parents were a tremendous help, offering not only emotional support, but also practical assistance with Lily. They became a safe haven for both of us, a place where we could retreat and find some semblance of normalcy. Sarah continued to reach out, sending tearful messages and making desperate phone calls, but I maintained my distance. I knew that engaging with her would only reopen wounds that were beginning to heal. My focus was on moving forward, not looking back. Therapy was a game changer for me. My therapist helped me navigate the storm of emotions I was experiencing: anger, betrayal, sadness, and even guilt. We worked through my feelings of inadequacy and the fear that had taken root deep within me. Slowly, I began to reclaim my sense of self-worth and build a new vision for my future. One day, while going through some old photographs, I found a picture of Sarah and me from happier times. I looked at our smiling faces, remembering the love we once shared. It was a bittersweet moment, but it also marked a turning point. I realized that while our marriage had ended in the worst possible way, it wasn't all a lie. There were genuine moments of happiness and love, and those memories, however tarnished, were part of my journey. The divorce was finalized just before Christmas. It felt surreal to sign the papers, officially ending a chapter of my life that I had once believed would last forever. But as I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. The legal battles, the arguments, the constant stress, all of it was behind me. Sarah moved out of our house, and I began the process of making it a home again. I redecorated, creating a space that felt fresh and new. It was therapeutic, a way to reclaim my life and make it my own once more. Lily adjusted remarkably well to the new arrangement. Children are resilient, and with the love and support of my parents and me, she began to thrive again. We established new routines, and I made sure to spend as much quality time with her as possible. Our bond grew stronger through it all, and her laughter became the brightest part of my days. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Lily turned to me and said, "Daddy, Are you happy? Her question took me by surprise. I thought about it for a moment, looking at her innocent face. Yes, sweetheart, I replied, pulling her close. I am happy, because I have you. The road to recovery was long and filled with challenges, but I emerged stronger and more determined than ever. I learned to embrace the uncertainty of the future, knowing that I had the strength to face whatever came my way. And while the scars of betrayal would always be there, they became a testament to my resilience and capacity for growth. In time, I even found it within myself to forgive Sarah, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger and resentment only held me back. By letting go, I freed myself to fully embrace the new life I was building. I also started dating again, tentatively at first, but with an open heart. I knew I had a lot to offer, and that there was someone out there who would value and respect me for who I am. The experience taught me to be more mindful of my needs and to communicate openly and honestly in any future relationships. As spring arrived, bringing new beginnings, I looked forward to the future with hope. My career was back on track. Lily was thriving, and I had rediscovered my own strength and resilience. Life had thrown its hardest punches, but I had stood firm, and now I was ready for whatever came next. And so, on a sunny morning, as I watched Lily play in the yard, her laughter echoing in the air, I felt a deep sense of peace. We had made it through the storm, and though the journey had been painful, it had also led us to a place of newfound joy and possibility. We were ready to write the next chapter of our lives, together.